follows on quite naturally from the last speaker, and Mr. Sheila over there, so some very sensible points. Mine is about balancing working life and family. Would any of you say you successfully balance your working success with looking after a young family and taking the lead on the domestic front? If so, what are your top tips for doing so, without going insane and feeling damned if you do and damned if you don't? The eternal challenge of being the parent you want to be and achieving professional success simultaneously, which I still think is very hard to do.
I think myself and Kirsten are answering some of the two projectile voices. I think, taking you from what you said there, I think it depends on how you define success and balance. For me, success comes from juggling both of them and knowing I'm not perfect and I'm spare. So I'm a great believer in the 80-20 rule. I think as long as I get the top 20% done in both places, I'm absolutely fine. I learned to shed guilt many years ago. I remember agonising when my children were little about getting to the nursery and being late, and it wasn't much about the fine, because we always got the massive psychological impact that I must be having on my daughter as I was 5 minutes late to pick her up. And actually, when you look at years, children are very resilient. They bounce back. I think being a role model, I have two daughters aged 14 and 12, I think being a role model for them is incredibly important. But I also think you've got to know what you will or won't cut out. I joked about the Jamie Oliver earlier. It's true, I've had to make choices. I used to be a tiny freak, so I'd come home, my mum taught me, you have to keep tidying up. I learned after a while that actually you can't ever tidy up after children, and it takes you away from spending time with them. So you should come and see our house now. Now they're a bit older, they've got better. But you learn to prioritise, and sometimes it does mean letting go of some of the ideals that you held very dear in previous years. But as your time becomes more and more squeezed, becoming an effective delegator at work, becoming an effective delegator at home, get them making their own beds, unloading the dishwasher, speaking to you at dinner, and helping you with things, because we've all got 24 hours in a day. But I think you've got to take inspiration from people who seem to achieve so much with their 24 hours. The Jamie Olivers, the Richard Bransons, the lady from Facebook. Cheryl. They also only have 24 hours in a day. So what is it that they are doing that's different? And it's probably a bit of time management, a bit of shedding of guilt, and a bit of accepting that actually children are resilient and will bounce back.
I think I'm following on from that. I have a particularly odd environment. I think I've mastered the solution, and that's marry a house husband. It's basically the solution. What I was going to say was that I watched How Does She Do It? Has anyone seen it with Sarah Jessica Parker, or was it just Sarah Parker? I spent most of the film in tears, either through recognition of events in my own life, or the comedy of it all, the crown doesn't fit into the car. And it brought about feelings of guilt. Either way, I was basically going to be damned if I was, damned if I wasn't. I was spending the whole of the movie in tears. I was the mother that missed the first smile. I was the mother who missed the first word and the first haircut. But my peers forgave me because I was actually mocking up my husband who was smashed to smithereens when I was 8.5 months pregnant. And he basically had a series of 4 years of operations to put him back together again. So he decided that his motorcycle was best placed going at 64 miles an hour in the back of a Volvo 480. But my two kids basically had no memory of it. Why they had no memory of it? First of all, they were too young. But basically, that was their setting, just as much as we have horses, men and women who go overseas and their children don't see their fathers and mothers for a great length of time. My children grew up with a mother who was away for 3 weeks out of 4 during the week, and it was completely normal. I prioritise on what's important, the concert, the speech day awards, the sleepovers, and make divisions of those. But I also explain why I want to be at every single hockey match that is going on Saturday afternoon. But my husband is also just as good a parent as I am. And I think that's something, a lesson that we should all learn, that really we do seem to think we're better at it than they are. If we let them be good, I consider that we have equal opportunities and I respect what my husband does, and that means completely relying on them to do it as well, perhaps differently, but at least as well as we do. I've taught my children to be independent, much like previous comments, and individual, and to respect my individuality as well. I'm not just their mother. At an early age, I gave them choices. Which trips do you want to go on? You don't get everything in life. And I also allowed them to have a little bit of control over me. What would you like me to come and see? What would you like me to come and attend at school? They're amazingly resilient beasts. My children are blissfully happy. Beasts being the My children are blissfully happy. They're confident, naturally high-achieving young people. Women are naturally critical of themselves. We are our own worst enemies. But we can't blame men for it either. Yeah.
Next question is from a gentleman. Yul.
Hello. My name's Yul and I'm a man. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you, Adela, for getting me to read out this question. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad I've got some supporters. I'm not the only one here. Anyway, a question for those budding entrepreneurs. Leaving the income and security of being employed to start up your own business with a corresponding increase in risk and lower income, at least initially, puts many people off starting their own business. Is this something that you faced, and if so, how did you overcome it?
Well, I was 23 when I wanted to start my first business, and some people called it bravery, some called it foolishness. I was living in Docklands, and Docklands had one building that was called Noble at the time, and the Reichman brothers who bought it were going into receivership. And I rather wisely decided that I was going to set a dental practice on the Isle of Dogs. So I went along to Lloyd's to get a loan, and I remember sitting across the table that was I just have memories of it being enormous. There's a chasm between me and the bank manager, and I told him my story, and he looked at me down here, with his glasses down here, and he said, "Madam, you have no business experience. What makes you think you can succeed when people who have experience, like the Reichman brothers, are going into receivership at the report?" And so I sort of left with my tail between my legs and thought, well, okay. And I just decided that I had to be more resourceful than go to a bank. And it was nerve-wracking, to be honest, because I was leaving working for a dentist. But I set about looking at where I could save. I've got lots of volunteers. It's amazing how many people will come on board to help you, because as you said, every experience is a learning experience. So I rallied friends together. I found some space that I wanted to rent. I did my sums, and I thought I could just about scrape through my first year if I kept another job for 2 days a week and then worked in my new business 3 days a week. I could just scrape through according to the math I've done. But I did have a wobble the night before I signed my lease. I was taking on a 3-year lease, and at midnight I rang my father up in the States and I said, "I just want to run this past you. Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" And he said, "Well, let's just talk this through. You said you wanted to be an orthodontist. Why don't you set your own practice up and you're going to be an orthodontist?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, how long will it have taken you to go on to do that higher degree?" I said, 3 years. He said, "What would you be learning for those 3 years?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "And what would that have been costing?" And I said, £8,000 to £10,000 a year. He said, "Okay." He said, "And how much are you going to make in year 1 and year 2? Well, your outlays. I needed a member of staff, I needed a chair, and I needed some space that I could rent." So they weren't massive outgoings. So I did all the sums and talked them through with him. And he said, "Well, do you think you could break even in year 1 or be under by less than £30,000 in 3 years?" And I said, "Yes, I think I could, as long as I can keep up the job." And he said to me, "Well, the way I look at it is I would be £30,000 down if you went and did a higher degree." So go ahead and sign that. And I did, and I never looked back. Seriously, I think it is about working out the maths, not digging a hole that you cannot get out of. I think that's really important. I think if you make very grand plans and throw a lot of money at a venture market testing it, and knowing where you're going, you can dig a hole that's very difficult to get out of. But you know, some sensible planning, some moderate risk taking, and you're there.
Now, my story is actually very similar in as much as I set up my business when I was about a year out of university. So one of the things that made that a lot easier was my outgoings were quite low. I needed to be able to generate enough income to feed myself and pay my rent, but I had no mortgage, I had no kids, no expensive lifestyle to support. So I think the longer you leave it, the bigger the risk, because the bigger the outgoings. The only thing I really had to risk was my pride, the potential humiliation when it all fell apart. But I kind of half expected it would fall apart, so I was kind of okay with that. I think the other, curious, the other thing that made it easier, perhaps, to take the risk was it's not on camera, isn't it? So I need to be careful, but I loathed my job. And the risk of looking like a bit of an idiot if it didn't work, relative to sticking with my job and being miserable every day, seemed like a price I was prepared to pay. I also had a curiously lucky break just before I was due to take up my job, a graduate job in an international strategy consulting firm, just in October 2001. About a couple of weeks before I was due to take up the job in the middle of September, just after September 11th, I was asked by my future employer if I'd postpone my start date for a few months, which was great because I was lucky to have a job. If I'd been applying for a job around that time, I wouldn't have had a chance. So I was lucky to have applied for a job in the Boo 6 or 9 months before. But anyway, I found myself in a predicament where I had a flat that I'd already taken, and my student overdraft would max out just at the time my first paycheck would come in, so everything would be fine. Then I had the rug pulled under me because I was asked to postpone a few months. So I had to find income for 3 months. And I was desperate, and I applied for temping jobs, everything. In fact, an old Rodian friend and I had a crack at rickshaw riding, but she was in the hockey team, the lacrosse team, the everything team, and as you can guess, I wasn't. So she was good at it, and I sucked. So plus I had my mother calling me every 10 minutes to check that I hadn't been mugged or stolen or something. So I didn't do that for long, and I got pretty desperate and handed out my CV in the area where I was living. I got a very lucky break from somebody who spotted that I'd spent a year at the Judge Business School at Cambridge and asked me to do some work analysing one of their business units. And I had an amazing 3 months doing that, really as an odd job consulting assignment. So when I went to start my first job with the firm that I'd applied to, that did begin in the following January, and I discovered that I absolutely hated it. I knew that actually there was another way. I knew that actually it could be extremely exciting and stimulating and rewarding, which gave me the confidence to hand my notice in and give it a shot. Plus, I had my mother backing me up, so emotionally and encouraging me. So I knew that if I did make a brat of myself, I could partly blame her. So I suppose the moral of my story is that the younger you do it, the easier it is. The longer you leave it, the bigger the risk. So just do it.
Words of inspiration there. Next question is from Monica.
Yes, I'm Monica, and I must be the oldest Rhodinian here, which is in the front, and you're also young. And I've had some wonderful questions and answers, and I'd like to ask this very much about how would be the future of advertisers?
Fabulous question. I think rather controversially I've got that one. My answer is whoever they best fit and ask the question. We as women consider ourselves our skills individually, and I think perhaps we are doing ourselves a disservice by carving the industry and the environment that we're in into a gender war. We are individually capable and should be considered in our own right for that task. Our qualities don't put us in second place, they just put us in a different place. I think the comment earlier about having predominant or all female boards scares witness, because until we don't live in a capitalist economy, the idea that women would make as much money as the fight and flight men boards is just not a reality. You need a balance in everything we do. We need a balanced diet, we need a balanced life, work-life experience, we also need balanced goals. Men are naturally flight, as I said, and women are naturally nature and nurture. Doesn't mean we all are. Some of us are slightly more one way than the other. We don't need to succeed by being rule breakers, I think is the term, or indeed imitating men. And in fact, as you were commenting earlier, there are women around who have remained very feminine in their senior roles and are no longer really wearing trousers. So we don't have to reach our positions by the courtesy of a quota. And I don't think any woman who does reach a position on an executive, non-executive, or any other hyphenated name of the board and got there by the courtesy of some government quota would feel she had earned her stripes. I feel very sorry for men. I feel very sorry for the poor men in this room. All four of them. My husband didn't dare. In the 1950s, I'm sure one might remember, they were in the castle, they knew their place, as we did, as women. They owned the money, they opened doors as we got out of taxis. They provided, they were the management, they were the bosses, they were also the engine of our society. Men were programmed and still are to perform one task very well. Women are programmed to perform many tasks, some of which very well. But we all know we have left tasks undone. We all know we have left the tools out after that DIY job. And we all know the age-old phrase, "Thou that cooketh, washeth up not." Men have been now forced, by no will of theirs and choice of their own, to cook and to clean and to care for the kids, as well as work, provide, open doors, be courteous, be caring, be strong, and just about do it all. So we've spent the last generation asking for it all, and we've expected the men to be it all. We have expected them to make lists. Now, when my husband was effectively crippled after his massive dice with death on B4350, and he was the first person to be airlifted by the Dorset and Somerset Air Ambulance the day before it was commissioned. And I was 8.5 months pregnant, and I did give birth with my husband still in the hospital. In fact, actually, he was in the hospital bed next to me. He was laid out with prostate, and I was actually laid out with morphine and anything else that we were given. He kept on pinching the gas and air. He was in more desperate need than I was. But when I took him home, I had a 2.5-year-old and I had a newborn baby with jaundice, and I had a crippled husband simultaneously all at once. And so I decided that I was not going to become a carer full time. He was still capable to look after himself in certain environments. So I set myself the B rule. He had everything that began with the letter B, and I had the other 25 letters of the alphabet. Now, it is remarkable, and it was through no forethought whatsoever, that the B, letter B, is absolutely brilliant. We have bugs, we have bins, we have bulbs, we have back garden, we have basements, we have bathrooms, we have bedrooms, we even have baby.